But I think you're right, Josh. I think that if the primary care providers could diagnose, we could review labs and medications and take it from there.
And manage, yeah.
It'd be a game changer with healthcare, but there's got to be a payment model for it, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
and it's really hard to get payers to pay for something that they just cannot. They still see us as the commodity, right? And it's so hard. Once you say pharmacy, they're like drug.
Yeah. Right.
Pills in a bottle.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and usually it's how much less expensive can we get the drug? Like, and it's interesting where, you know, you start seeing like the vertical integration of a health system or a health plan owning a PBM. When they own a pharmacy, that's when I've got a problem with it. But joining medical and pharmacy together makes sense because you should be looking at total cost of care. Who cares how much you spend on metformin? It's stupid, right?
Yeah.
When you spend money on a renal transplant, different story, right? Like, it's just bonkers.
Really hard to separate those two. You know, I love, you know, I'm going to plug CPESN right now. But like going back to, you know, Joe, I'm sure that you guys have seen the slide where he shows the, you know, 100% pie and drug is 10% and all the medical spend is 90%. And, you know, if you can we can't forget about the 10% because I'll agree with Jeff, who was just on whose podcast just aired, like prescription is still the bulk of our business.
Right.
I mean, dispensing prescriptions. We're not at the point where you can say, okay, well, I'll give up a little of that for this. You're not going to put a sign on your door and says we're not going to accept any more prescriptions. Like, you're just not going to do it. We have to we have to make sure that the payment model there is good, and we're you know, at cost recovery plus. Like, I mean, I don't think you're right. Pharmacy benefit managers and insurance companies are going to see, well, what's the minimum dollar I can pay, or sometimes the minimum cents I can pay for this for this drug. We got to be able to be paid for that service. And I want to explore clinical options and get paid for those services that really utilize my degree and my expertise. But we can't forget about this other side.
Yeah,
you know. And
and
it's just
one thing on top
tough.
of that. The prescription is often the reason you have that patient in front of you. So if you completely decouple the prescription from the clinical service, you lose how frequently you're in front of that patient. So that's something that I think we kind of tend to lose sight of as well. All these clinical services that we can offer are only on the horizon because you see that person 12 times a year.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of part of what I've heard you say before too, where it's like, that's also why when you decouple those, you see like call center MTM not work or really not be impactful, right? Because you're not standing in front of the patient 12 times a month.
Right.
Or 12 times a year. Sorry.
And that's funny you bring that up. I got a call from a vendor this week and saying that, you know, we've got this new clinical program and where when you have clinical opportunities, we'll just do them for you and make sure you get the payments. You don't lose the opportunity. And I said, absolutely not. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that we check box every single clinical opportunity that comes across. You know, it's really hard to make sure you're taking advantage of all of those, but they're not going to do it any better.
No,
You know, the reason you have those patients is because you've developed those relationships, and they don't want to hear from an outside call center. You know, so it's how do we continue to keep up this volume and doing these filling these prescriptions, you know, in the best way that we can, but also expand our staff. You know, the payment's got to be there to be able to hire, you know, and anytime you hire before you have the payment, that's just it's a huge risk. And we're somewhere caught in the middle right now.
Yes.
Yeah. You're kind of in that spot where, you know, when a pharmacy goes to implement MedSync for the first 25% of their patients that go on MedSync, it's more work for the pharmacy. It's a huge pain in the butt. And then you hit that critical part where you've got enough people on MedSync where it starts to free up a bunch of time. We're in that bucket right now where you've got enough clinical services on your plate where it's additive to your workload, not adding to your ability to add more people, add, different processes, re-engineer your process. You're in that part right now where it's just really painful.
Yeah, for sure. We're at about 30% MedSync, and which I'm really proud of, because the particular community that we serve, it is difficult.
Right.
I'm not going to lie. It's very difficult, challenging. We just had a strategic planning meeting with our MedSync group. My MedSync's totally out of workflow from, we've got acute and non-acute workflow, and had a meeting with them. And, I've got one coach who's like, I think we're doing pretty well. And then I've got one coach who's like, hey, I got barriers. Like, I know where your vision is. I know you want to move to clinical MedSync and you want to do these enhanced services and really provide this next level care where we're helping patients manage their disease stage. I can't get them to answer the phone. So how are we going to, or when I answer the phone, I start asking, okay, well, you don't want your metformin this month? How come? It's perceived as, oh, she's being nosy. Like, why does she need
you're
to
kind of prying.
We have some major barriers and have to rethink kind of the way that we do MedSync in certain populations, because I've been to Mexico, been to everywhere I go outside the country, I have to go to the pharmacy, right? We have to see how everybody else does it. And when you go to like Mexico, you just walk in and say, this is what I want, and you leave with it. For the most part.
Oh, wow.
And
except for the really fun stuff.
Okay. It's like,
I walked up and I was like, I'm not a diabetic, by the way, but I said, I'm going to need some insulin. What's your best insulin? And the girl's like, well, we have all these. And, there's no, like, it's just very much, it seems like just plug and play, just whatever you want, you take, it's different. And, it may not be that way in every community, but the few places that I've been, that's how it is. And when I ask patients, what has your past experience been? They're like, well, if my doctor tells me I'm going to be on lisinopril for the rest of my life, I don't need to go. But like the concept of going back to get labs drawn or whatever to get another prescription, it's like, why do I have to do that?
Right.
I have high blood pressure, and like just explaining the concepts of like our prescription filling process is a challenge we have. And so MedSync, it's like when you're trying to grow, you also don't want your staff to be like banging their head into a wall because, oh, well, she wants me to grow this percentage or she wants me to have this many patients, but I'm spending days and days trying to track some of these patients down.
Right.
They agreed to it when we first talked to him, but it's not fully there. So, we're trying to like revisit that and figure out, okay, how do we change our process? Because I truly believe you have to meet the patient where they're at. You have to figure out, does that mean our hours for MedSync are different? Calls are made between 12 and 8, instead of 8 to 6 or 8 to 4, when people are working. You got to meet people where they are.